Right. As people trickle in, first of all, I'd like to welcome everybody. We'll give about a minute or so for our audience to join in, and then we will get started. All right. I think we can get started. I think people will start trickling in as we go, but I think we've hit critical mass. So just to welcome everybody, I just want to make sure that everybody's aware this webinar will be recorded. Next slide, please. So today we'll be hosting the second part of CEH's Exploring Flooring series. This webinar will focus on exploring sustainable flooring materials and will be presented in partnership with the Healthy Materials Lab, along with two flooring manufacturers, Windmoller and DuraQuil. So let's go to the next slide, please. Thank you. Before we move forward, I want to touch on a few housekeeping items. First, as I mentioned previously, the webinar will be recorded, and we will share a copy of the recording along with the presentation slides with all attendees. Secondly, we will have a Q&A session after the presentation. So I would ask that you guys, the audience, please use the Zoom Q&A button, the Q&A feature, to put in any questions you may have, and we will do our best to address as many as possible. So again, just please make sure to use the Q&A button and not the chat to put in your questions. So with that, I want to be able to introduce our featured speakers. First off, we have Leila Behjet, who is the Director of Material Ecology at the Parsons Healthy Material Lab. Leila will be talking about what constitutes a healthier flooring material and the work that the Healthy Material Lab has done to vet and review these products. We also have myself, Jose Aguayo. I am the Senior Program Manager of CEH's Green and Clean Procurement Team. I will be briefly recapping what was covered in our previous webinar. So next slide, please. With that, I want to talk a little bit about CEH for those in the audience who are not familiar with the work that we do as an organization. CEH is a nonprofit organization, and our mission is to reduce exposure to toxics in our air, water, soil, food, and the products that we use every day. Over the years, we really have developed a great deal of expertise in sustainable, non-toxic built environment products, specifically furniture, flooring, and foodware. And we have also developed several sustainable flooring resources to help institutional purchasers select safer products. And we will be glad to share these with you after the webinar. Next slide, please. So I will briefly recap our previous webinar on the environmental and health impacts of PVC or LVT. Next slide, please. So the previous webinar noted that the flooring market is currently dominated by PVC and that there are a huge number of health and environmental hazards associated with these. Now, these hazards occur throughout the product's life cycle, whether it's during its production, during its use, or disposal. And these hazards really bring a number of risks to the manufacturers and the users. Things like regulation, impending regulation at the federal level, even the state level as well, legal and financial problems because of some of these regulations and the costs associated with switching to a different material, and even reputation hazards for using such of these materials. And we also noted that safer solutions are within reach. And so we want to cover those during this webinar. Next slide, please. So with that, I want to transition over to Leila from the Healthy Material Labs, who will be talking about safer alternatives. Leila, please take it away.
Thank you so much, Jose. I'm really grateful that you invited Healthy Materials Lab to this part 2 on flooring alternatives. It's really great to be here and to add to the previous topic and part 1. And I have to say, if the audience hasn't seen the recording by Michael Shade, it's really worth looking because there's very great information. And so as Jose said, yeah, I'm the Director of Material Ecology at Parsons Healthy Materials Lab, and I'm also the co-founder of our EU sister Healthy Materials Lab EU, and I'm an architect. So I'll say let's start and take a kind of a short deep dive into our work. So in addition to the current social and political struggles, we are all facing multiple planetary crises, namely climate change, toxic burden, and biodiversity loss. And they're completely interconnected, unable to be separated. And our work at the lab is an immediate response to these complex issues that are impacting our culture, our planet, and the health of our families. So I would like to just take us a step back. For millennia, humans have relied on the basic elements of earth, air, fire, and water to support our life and to evolve here on the planet alongside plants and other living things. Throughout human history, people found and used nature's materials to make shelter, find food, care for the children and communities. Our lives were designed and built from necessity, and we depended on our own curiosity about the things, so to say, around us. We scouted our landscape for materials and invented tools and methods for working with it. And so currently the use of local materials is still practiced in a few cultures. Many of our cultures have forgotten, but luckily we can and are starting to rediscover some of these practices, integrate them, and adapt and evolve them for today. We humans seem to evolve through constant questioning, for example, exploring the scientific nature of matter. This image, for example, was created by a French scientist as his idea of the internal structure of steel in the 1700s. And we learned to create new economies and industries, for example, using machines to process wool. And we also explored the atomic structures of matter. As a result, during World War II, we began inventing new molecules that were not found in nature. And while this knowledge shows our human genius, it was not tempered with any understanding of how these molecules would degrade or impact environments or other living things. And so today, man-made fossil fuel-based synthetic materials are the building block of our homes. So at the lab, it is clear to us that we cannot continue to build with the same materials Western civilization has been developing over the last 80, 90 years. At Healthy Materials Lab, we asked, what is a different way forward? How can we design and build healthy buildings today? And so we work to address the toxics and climate issue by charting new pathways to design and to build healthy spaces, neighborhoods, and cities. Our design-led research lab is a vibrant group of dedicated researchers, faculty, students, and colleagues from a variety of disciplines. We work collaboratively towards bringing awareness and change. As we know, this needs to be the work of many joining together. And so again, this is why this type of space, as we're here in today, is so special and important. Thank you again. Currently, materials that make up our buildings, cities, objects, and furniture are releasing toxic particles that are absorbed into all of our bodies. And of course, most people assume that materials and products we buy have been tested for safety. Unfortunately, most chemicals commonly used in building and consumer products in the United States and globally to some extent are not regulated for their impact on human health or the environment. So of these 86,000 plus chemicals, we see here only 25 have been tested, and then only 5 have been partially restricted by law today. There are many products typically used in construction, and they contain chemicals linked to human disease. Their ingredients impact people in construction, in production, and the people who live with the materials in their homes, and then also after use. Contemporary affordable homes are constructed primarily of petroleum-based plastic products. These materials often have enormous carbon footprints, and they make use of harmful untested chemicals, as I mentioned, out of these 86,000 plus chemicals. Evidence for the connection between human health and chemicals can be found within the Exposome project. This research identifies that the environment we live in triggers 90% of human diseases, while genetics determines only the remaining 10%. And so Mount Sinai hosts the Institute for Exposome Research, and it reveals that thousands of industrial chemicals are found in the blood of all of us. These chemicals trigger many diseases that harm us today, which can reach from cancers to diabetes. So we know to look at nutrition labels for food products, like, for example, Doritos. And so we can see the different ingredients and then make a more informed decision on whether we do or don't want to eat this. And unfortunately, ingredient labels are not required for building products yet. And at the same time, just like food, the ingredients of building products get into our bodies. And it's because of that why it's so important to know what the materials and products around us are made of. Which gets us to material health thinking, which is a skill that needs to become a routine habit for all of us. And it's not only asking the manufacturer for transparency documents, whether they're available, but also to be constantly curious about the composition of materials. And there's a list of simple questions that we incorporate into our vetting work, our teaching, and the design practices. What is it made of? How is it made? Where is it made? Does it require harmful finishes? How will it be installed? Where does it go at the end of its useful life? And importantly, who is impacted throughout its life cycle? These questions might ring a bell as they relate to the life cycle of a material or a product. And in our work, we look at materials and ingredients through the lens of material health. This lens shows impacts on health, carbon emissions, social equity, biodiversity, and they're all interconnected. And per this lens, we evaluate materials at every stage of their life cycle. So for example, does it end as waste or is it biodegradable? What does a regenerative product look like? Does it pollute our water, soil, or ecosystems? And it's important to point out that we revised to evolve from the practices and concepts of extraction to material sourcing. Extraction is part of our currently and still prevalent way of approaching nature and our environment. It's seen as an anonymous source we can just take from as we need to and as much as we want and whenever. And sourcing materials takes into account supplies from secondary sources, secondary raw materials, waste streams, or reuse. So it might seem that there are many materials to consider in our home. One of our biggest credos at the lab is one step at a time. So for example, by focusing on high volume surfaces, that is from the 5 surfaces in a room, flooring usually equals the square footage of the space, and we're also in touch with it a lot. So it's a very high impact product category. If we apply the aforementioned question of what is it made of, we look closely to see the variety of materials present in one product. And through that analysis, we see that in this case of a PVC, for example, in each of these layers, there are chemical additives. these additives are known to have harmful effects on people who are exposed over a period of time. And I know it was mentioned by Jose, but I would like to just again point to this fabulous resource by CEH. I really urge you to take a look at this in-depth report as it looks at the true cost of LVT. And it's exactly this aspect of cost that needs some deeper attention, because very often that drives the selection of this material. So, for example, there's the cost of health. You might remember this black plum of toxic smoke from the derailed train in East Palestine, Ohio in 2023. The train was transporting vinyl chloride, an essential ingredient for making PVC. It's a known human carcinogen that can increase the risk of developing certain liver cancers. The burning chemicals sickened residents, it polluted the town, and currently researchers are tracking the long-term health effects of this accident. And then there's also the cost of carbon emissions. Research findings also show that LVT or PVC has a heavy carbon footprint, and that is despite its PR messaging that claims the opposite. Fossil fuel are used to power the factories, make the ingredients, transport the products and raw materials. And in the near future, plastics production from petrochemicals are destined to be the largest emitters of greenhouse gases. And I just want to point out again that the previous presentation has really great data on that. LVT or PVC is one of the plastics that cannot be recycled because of its chlorine content. And so when we're preparing for interior renovations, LVT flooring gets tossed out and ends up in landfills where it is exposed to weather and sun. It gets brittle and starts leaching microparticles into our water and soil system, which eventually harm all of us as our global ecosystems are integrally connected. So in our work to find alternatives, we look closely at every product and what it is made of. We keep coming back to this question. And so if we look at the ingredients of the popular luxury vinyl tile, we see that it's practically made of 50% PVC, whereas an alternative like a linoleum has plant-based material as main ingredients. So linoleum is a plant-based resilient flooring that stands the test of durability and longevity, as it has been used for decades and almost a century. It kind of boils down to the question that we can ask ourselves, which would we rather put in a home? Our goal is to find products that are better, which means they need to meet aesthetic and durability expectations while being healthier for humans and the planet. This evaluation is based on transparency and a very close relationship with manufacturers who bring better options to market. So at the lab, we see that in this context, so looking at the present and to the future, we ask, what if we took lessons from ancient indigenous cultures that have lived in harmony with natural systems and merged with today's know-how and opportunities? What if the production of raw materials for future building products looked like this instead of this? What if new jobs and working conditions looked like this instead of this? What if new low carbon building products looked like this instead of business as usual? And what if the renovation of new, affordable, healthy, energy efficient homes looked like this instead of this? Lastly, what if the waste from building materials was 100% biodegradable and recyclable instead of adding to our landfills? So we're now in 2025, just 5 times 12 months, 60 months from 2030, which is kind of the line in the sand in terms of the global goal to reduce carbon emissions by half. And as we like to add, to eliminate toxic pollutants from people's everyday lives, environments, and buildings. We need scaled regenerative materials and technologies that support environments, people, and biodiversity, that remediate toxics instead of produce them, sequester carbon instead of emitting, and contribute to local economies. We feel that we live in a time of opportunity because there's a lot of invention happening and there are scaled options. And so I referred to better plant-based resilient flooring example earlier. And indeed, we will have two great, truly impactful examples here today, which are going to be introduced by the manufacturers themselves. And just to frame this product category of flooring, I want to point out very briefly a few promising materials made from alternatives such as mycelium, earth, replacing fossil fuel ingredients. Of course, flax is a plant which is the basis for so many materials that we have relied upon for centuries, such as in resilient flooring, textiles, or insulation. And there's also, for example, a Belgian company, BC Materials, which produces earth blocks, paints, finishes, and plaster from earth, using mostly excavated earth from construction sites. And as a side note, when it's no longer needed, it will disintegrate back to the earth. There's Mooskin, 100% vegetable alternative to animal leather, made from a large parasitic fungus that grows on the trees located in subtropical forests, or fungi forest here on the right. It's called Xylo Biofinish, which is a mix of natural oils such as linseed oil and a nature-activated harmless fungus that protects the wood and helps maintain it because it's itself a living system. There's Mogu, a company from Italy, another early adopter, creating flooring and acoustical wall and ceiling tiles from mycelium. It's really that the biggest conclusion you hopefully walk away with today: we do not need to use vinyl at all for any reason. There are plenty of options made from nature-based materials that decrease and avoid the need for fossil fuel. To dramatically reduce toxic emissions inside our homes, we can select flooring that uses formaldehyde-free glues and non-toxic natural oils for their floors if it's a wood flooring. And a new report from Rocky Mountain Institute shows that healthy building products made from biomass can create tens of thousands of new jobs in the US and generate $79 billion in domestic manufacturing opportunities. Every material we choose represents a decision. And the question is, what factors into our decision-making? Is it based on performance, quality, aesthetics, cost? And our research at HML has led us to adding factors of health to our material choice, namely, how do our design decisions affect health of humans and all living things in our planetary health? In our natural and regenerative material collection, you can find options of building with nature in bio and geogenic materials. We're always building out our collections of mostly scaled products. There's always a few early pioneers to show what is coming, but most are market ready. And we also conduct in-depth vetting of readily available products in the EU. Our material collections are composed of helpful guidance to find healthy products, understand what to look out for, and how to select healthy and ideally low embodied carbon options. And so last but not least, we have a variety of services we offer. We deliver material education on multiple platforms to help empower the A&D industry and push for transformation in practice. I've mentioned it, we offer vetted collections of healthier materials. And our consultations with architects, designers, developers, communities, and municipalities are clear demonstrators that healthy materials can be used to create innovative, affordable, and healthy spaces for living today. Our publication, Material Health Design Frontiers, came out in 2023 and is a defining compilation which shares some really excellent examples and strategies to create healthy, decarbonized, circular design and buildings. So I hope you'll join us at healthymaterialslab.org for new resources, courses, and research. And I look forward to the next presentations in our Q&A.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that, Leila. We really appreciate the insights you shared with us. With that, I want to transition over to our first manufacturer speakers, which is Windmoller. Tim Cole, Windmoller's Director of Sustainability and Technical Services, will be talking to us about their sustainable flooring options. So, Tim, please take it away.
Great, and thank you. As I'm honored to take part in this discussion today on material health and alternatives to PVC resilient flooring. But the first question I always get, well, who is Windmoller? Well, it's a 75-year-old third generation family-owned business based in Germany with a focus on innovation and dedicated to sustainability, transparency, and performance, which is also the inventor of PureLine bio-based polyurethane resilient flooring. Next. Because of part one in the webinar that shared an alarming information towards vinyl chloride and LVT resilient flooring. So I really thought, instead of just going into product, I thought it best to answer some of the questions that I get almost on a daily basis from end users and specifiers, but I'll try to talk real quick. Next slide, please. So why does PVC flooring continue to dominate the U.S. commercial resilient flooring market since we have all this information passed to us on vinyl chloride? Well, it's because PVC has really set the benchmark. What is that? Because of its performance, it's easy to install, it's easy to clean, it has design flexibility, it has affordable costs, and the end users have very little problems. So, that's what they want. But there are well-known PVC-free alternatives that have been in the market even before PVC flooring existed. The only thing is that they don't have that design flexibility or some performance attributes, which is why PVC flooring took off when it was first introduced in the early 60s. And these alternatives that were in the market were considered institutional looking. Now, there have been alternatives that have been introduced into the market since PVC flooring, but the only problem is some of them haven't performed. So what this does is it makes specifiers and end users a little unsure on whether they should specify these new products in the market. Next slide, please. So the manufacturing challenges that we have is that people say they want green, but they really keep specifying and buying, the same way they always have. We do have the elimination of chemicals of concern without giving up performance, and some of them were already said. We want to get rid of PFAS, antimicrobials, flame retardants, bisphenols, phthalates, solvents, and even some heavy metals. But finding these green chemistry, these new ingredients, sometimes aren't that easy. And the thing is that these huge chemical companies, if they're making really good money off the chemistry they already have, and their sales are actually going up, not going down, then they have no driver to create new green chemistry for a manufacturer to have an alternative. Everyone wants sustainability, but they want it at the same price that they're paying for the current products. The problem is that when we look for new raw materials, most of them carry at least a 20% or higher cost for these raw materials, which we have to then say, okay, we'll absorb some of this cost in order to keep it as close to the products that are in the market today. People don't want to pay more for green. Next slide, please. So one of the things is it was brought up, without being scientists, what is the easiest way to make these choices? With all the products that are in the built environment, how can anyone know all the technical ins and outs of them? So certifications and eco labels will help the specifier and end user to make their decision-making process easier. I would highly recommend to look for a multi-attribute certification like C2C, or look for a transparency in ingredient disclosure, like the slide that was shown about all the ingredients in our food, which is called an HPD, or Health Product Declaration. Also look for product-specific environmental footprint, because that's going to show you too the embodied carbon in a product, called an EPD, or an Environmental Product Declaration. I would certainly say that you should utilize an A&D firm that has a clear understanding and commitment towards material health. Next slide, please. This is one of the reasons why we looked at polyurethane chemistry, because it's a plastic that is a worldwide high-performance material. It's unsurpassed in its flexibility and formulation development, and enables us to design creative products with tailored-made properties. Next slide is just an example. And I'll switch real quick. But one of the things we need to do, next slide, please. One of the things we must do, because we want to talk about this performance, bio-based polyurethane flooring products do offer a great promise. It is important that their claims, our claims, have been tested appropriately and with repeatable results. There's two newer ASTM standards that define compositional and performance requirement for heterogeneous polyurethane flooring, which were published in 2022. This has performance requirements for F3403 and F3404, and include resistance to chemicals, heat and light, static load recovery, residual indentation, flexibility, and caster chair testing for durability. Next slide, please. But one of the things that we wanted to do is say, okay, if we're going to use a natural ingredient, a natural oil instead of petrochemicals, we want to have one that's not going to compete with the food market, because we want to support the stakeholders, the castor industry, and develop supply chain criteria to certify sustainable castor oil. The goal is to develop and implement standards for sustainable castor bean production while improving the livelihood of the farmers. Next slide, please. This is a chart that comes from an EPD and from an LCA, because everybody today is not, I like talking about material health, but people are now talking about embodied carbon. So they're always asking us about that. To my knowledge, and I look at a lot of EPDs, we're the only resilient fluorine. There's only one resilient fluorine that has a lower embodied carbon than Pureline, but it doesn't have that design and performance characteristics that we were talking about earlier. Next slide, please. So in summary, our Pureline product does go beyond PVC. It's performance driven, it's sustainably focused, and it's design centered. We've reimagined flooring to go beyond just the surface level durability. Pureline integrates lasting performance into the entire design, not of the product, not just the surface. This approach minimizes cleaning and maintenance while enduring reliable long-term resilience in even the most demanding spaces. For us, sustainability doesn't mean just about having eco-friendly materials. It's about creating a lasting positive impact on human health. Pureline uses bio-based polyurethane chemistry, eliminating harmful chemicals like PVC, plasticizers, solvents, chlorine, and replaces them with castor oil and chalk. Design and innovation are a driving force behind our business. Thoughtful design enhances our experience, builds brand loyalty, and fosters trust and credibility. Our approach combines decades of industry experience and design-centric perspective, where principles of color and contrast and pattern are meticulously applied to creating flooring visuals that are functional as well as they are compelling. I will appreciate that. Please take the time to go to wineoflooring.com, and you can see all about our product Pureline. please don't hesitate to contact me at any time. Again, my name's Tim Cole, and I'm the Director of Sustainability of Technical Services for Windmiller Inc. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Tim. It is great to see how sustainable alternatives are readily available through Windmiller. So now I want to introduce Bas van Genderen, who is the president of Duracryl International, and he will be talking to us about his company's sustainable flooring options. Bas, take it away now, please. Oh, we seem to have lost him for a minute. Let's see. I know we were having a few technical issues there. Let's see. Let's give him a minute or so. There you go. Hi, Bas. We're ready for you now.
I think I got unmuted. Carlo, yeah. Apologies up front because I'm talking from a car. So I'm in Long Island somewhere where the connection is not too great. I couldn't make it to a place where I have proper Wi-Fi. So I'm going kind of blindsided. I have no slides. I just would like to talk a little bit about Duracryl. Duracryl International is an 80-year-old company. We started working on sustainable, healthy materials in the 1990s in Europe, and started our company in the US in 2019. So we invent liquid linoleum. Am I back?
Yes, we can hear
Carlos?
you now.
Okay, so we invented liquid linoleum, which is actually the same ingredients as you find in regular linoleum, but we added castor oil to the product so we can actually install a linoleum floor on site without the use of any joints, so we can make a seamless flooring. There is no use of PVC. The floor bonds itself to the subfloor, so there are no other chemicals than just castor oil, linseed oil, and then we add sawdust, pine resin, and what's the other material? And a stone material to it, so we get the real linoleum. We also created a product called Durabella, which is our terrazzo material. And that was based on the fact that we wanted a product without BPAs. It's all the same kind of ground technology and all based on creating a healthy material, not only for the consumer, but also for the installers. Because the installers are a dying breed, and exposing them every day to toxic materials is not working out as well. Can I have a next slide, please? I see them now. A lot of our materials are similar to what Wineo does, though I disagree with Tim that healthy and sustainable has to be more expensive. We actually have developed installation methods with the new products that overall the product actually is cheaper than the traditional PVC or other vinyl type of products. You see here some pictures of installation which we did for the medical art studio dentist school in Modesto, California, 2018. We prepped the floor, did some prep work. After that, we installed the floor, and in a weekend, we installed 6,000 square foot of flooring. And we started on Friday. On Monday, the school was open again and in full use. Next slide, please. This is the same project, just showing how simple and easy it can be to install. The largest installation we did so far in one day was 16,000 square foot in one day. which is almost impossible with any other product unless you put 40-50 people on it and install it. We have to wait for the adhesives to cure. So next slide, please. Same installation. So next slide. The larger installation is actually a perfect example what you can accomplish with a liquid product. If you would have to do that same installation with a vinyl or a sheet good, you would have welding rods all around this column. And while if you use a liquid material, you will never have these welding rods showing up there, which are, by the way, big concerns for contamination and are made out of PVC. Our products are used in healthcare, education. Terrazzo was used in airports, bus stations, train stations, large commercial environments where there is a lot of foot traffic. Next slide, please. Another example of healthcare where we like to show on the right that the color is also not a problem. We have no cutting losses. We actually apply the floor and use our finish to make a design in the floor, and we can make the floor in any color which is requested by the customer. So our colors are limitless. We work with the full fan deck of colors to make products. Next one, please. Like any other product, we have all our ingredients are registered with Declare, what gives us the mindful material labels. We work with EPDs. We work with any thinkable product declaration which you can think of to prove that we produce healthy and reliable materials. Next, please. So this is what we call the tree of life. That's our goal, again, to make healthy materials, sustainable materials, regenerative materials. Every product can be 100% recycled. And one point I got a question last week, which is brought up because we produce liquid materials. Someone asked us what kind of isocyanates we are using. We actually developed our own biomass, which is now considered a PPI. So we don't use the MDIs or TDIs, which are usually used in the car industry and which are considered to be toxic when they are made airborne, when they are brought as a vital product into the air. So we use them as liquids, but we changed everything to biomass, so we don't have that issue anymore. That's about what I wanted to tell about Duracryl. If you have any questions, bring them up. We are here, or check us out at www.duracryl.com. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Bas. Really seeing the wide availability of so many flooring materials that are sustainable and non-toxic is great. Now, I want to open the floor for questions. We will address all the questions that we have in our Q&A Zoom feature in the order that we received. So the first one that I want to transition over, and for this, please feel free, Leila, and even Tim or Bas, if you want to chime in, please do so. The first question is, how do some of the LVT flooring receive GreenGuard score when they are really not healthy? A good example is Nora flooring made by Interface. Anybody want to take a shot at that?
I'm happy to, but if Tim or Bas, if you want to speak to it, I'm happy to add.
Well, you have to understand GreenGuard, Floor Score, even the California Section 01350, it's all about low emitting chemicals. So if these products go through a small chamber testing for their emissions, then and they meet the criteria, then they can get to carry this label or certification for being a low emitting material. That, you know, that doesn't have to anything to do with with ingredients or anything like that. It just has to do with the emissions of the product.
Yeah, and I would add that as Tim was showing this palette of certifications, it's always critical to understand what exactly the criteria and the thresholds are of the respective certifications. GreenGuard Gold, as much as yes, it is a label, sometimes tends to have higher tolerance, I should say, towards off-gassing substances. And it's a label that, you know, it definitely certifies a lower, potentially lower off-gassing, but it doesn't certify non-toxicity whatsoever.
Absolutely. Yeah, and just to add to that as well, I mean, I think Tim, you alluded to this, right? That the GreenGuard, Fluor-Score, and all these other ones, they're off-gassing labels, right? They look at the amount of volatile organic chemicals that are released from the product itself, but they do not look at anything other sustainability factors, like, for example, the sourcing of the product, right? The materials that are used in its
Right.
manufacturing. And they also don't look at any of the actual content of the product, right? Any chemicals that may be there, that may be released, maybe not through off-gassing, but through other methods, especially, you know, when the product is disposed of through things like incineration, right? So it's a great tool to use, but it is not all encompassing.
It's a great one to use in combination, which is why
Absolutely.
it said about multi-attribute, but I would also say, because that was one of the first lead credits in material was for low emitting materials, it has done a lot to move the manufacturers to low emitting products. It took formaldehyde out of many products because of the requirement. So it's done a lot of good, but it's the combination. And as I showed in my slide, there's lots of different certifications. So it's using more than one to make your decision.
For sure. So the next question, it reads, how can a poured floor be recycled? I think we were alluding to poured linoleum previously.
Yeah, I think that's for Bas.
Yeah, Bas, would you like to take a stab at that? Sandra is asking, how can poured flooring be recycled? Oh, I think we lost Bas.
Relatively easy and poured floor.
Sorry, Bas. Could you repeat that? You're cutting off a little.
Carlos? Yeah, poured flooring can be recycled the same way as any other type of flooring. When the lifetime is over, you pick it up, and it can either be use it as filler in products again. In the token, if you use biodegradable materials like what we use, it can actually go in the landfill and it will decompose over time.
Great. Thank you for that. We have
And if we actually, I can add to that.
Yeah, of course, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. No, I said if it's for a terrazzo product, for example, we are currently recycling a floor in Dallas, where we use the terrazzo floor and we use the aggregates which are coming out of the floor. We use them again in the backfill of a floor. So there's all kinds of ways that we can recycle all types of floors, including the poured floors.
Great, thank you for that. The next question we have says, could you please post, yeah, we will definitely post contact information about the manufacturers. We will provide you with their email and contact information along with the presentation recording and the slides themselves. after the webinar. But they are also asking, do manufacturers provide product presentations to designs and architects? Is that something that you guys provide, Bas and Tim?
Yes.
Duracryl definitely does this. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, we do it because, of course, a lot of requirements for architects and designers are keeping up their certifications. So we do have continuing education presentations. Of course, they're not manufacturer specific. They're more about innovations like what we're talking about today, alternative products, you know, that we help support and supply contact to the writer of the CEUs.
Great, excellent. And I think, we will definitely provide the contact information for both of you for our audience, and so they can get in touch with you directly in that way.
And may I just pitch that both companies are also represented on the material collection flooring section on healthy materials, with information why it's a healthier floor, why it makes the HML standard and evaluation. And there's also information on there.
Excellent. Thanks, Leila. We have another question here. Specifically in California, who installs liquid linoleum?
There are about 7 or 8 certified installers spread out through California between San Francisco and San Diego. I don't want to get into it to name them all, but there are multiple certified installers there.
Excellent.
I would like to add something what I think I couldn't say a minute ago. Carlos, there is a website. It's a group in Europe, and it's more in regards to the question about how can Interface mention that they have all these healthy materials. There's a website. It's called www.greenwashfree.com, what actually gives you information about every product made by floor manufacturers and tells you if it is a true green, healthy, sustainable product or not. It's an independent group who seems to organize that website.
Great, thank you for that, Bas. And I think, whoever put in that question can certainly get in touch with Bas to figure out who those installers are in California. I think we have time for 1 or 2 more questions. I have a couple of questions that were sent to me earlier, and I want to touch on those unless anybody else wants to put on any other questions here in the Q&A. But the first one talks about whether there are any tools that can allow someone to estimate the cost savings, including things like savings from human health and environmental impacts of using safer flooring alternatives. I think during the presentation we touched on the impacts to health and the environment that LVT has, but I think this question is touching specifically on financial cost savings and how can you translate, right? The savings due to human health, right, and environmental impacts.
Yeah, and if I may,
go ahead,
so
Leila. Of course.
Definitely, places like, for example, the Mount Sinai Exposomic Research Institute of Exposomic Research is looking at this type of data. But really, if just yesterday anybody was reading the article in the New York Times about the fires in LA and the connected cost of remediation, there was a number. State Farm stated in an email that just this year they had costs of $4.1 billion of payouts towards their customers because of the high cost of remediation in these homes because they are full of toxics. So this is not necessarily a per square foot analysis that I can deliver right now, but I think it points to that in a reverse way. It poses the question, what could we save? What could we save in health? What could we save in construction costs? if we were just to install healthier products from the get-go. And so it's what we touched on. I think one is that we need to revise our perception of cost. It factors in way more than the dollars that I see when I buy a product. And I think we will start seeing these costs coming together from entities such as insurances, from entities such as healthcare, because of the Exposome research that will help us connect the dots more. And so I really want to pitch that companies such as Windmöller Pureline and DuraCruel are on the market and are our option to make that change. They are scaled and market ready. It's not a myth. It's not a future thing. It's possible now.
Absolutely. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And I think the last question here then is talks about my company's sustainability goals focus on reducing carbon emissions. Now, the presentation noted that the carbon emissions of PVC manufacturing are quite high. So if we switched away from PVC, what flooring material or materials would be best to help us achieve these goals?
The two that are presenting here. Sorry to be so blunt, but exactly.
Excellent.
I dropped out. Can you hear me, Laila?
Yes,
We
I
can hear you
can.
now.
Yes, we can.
I wanted to add something because I am a part of a committee in Dallas, and you talked about finances. I think more and more cities and states are gonna understand the consequences, and the city of Dallas just launched actually a couple of months ago a program called CCAP, and they made a reservation of $1.2 billion, which can be spent the coming 5 years in tax benefits for companies who use and install actually healthier building materials in their construction projects.
Oh, wow.
Excellent. That's good to hear.
And if I may just add, I mean, Tim showed the slide with the EPD. I want to say that, here we have manufacturers that know where the EPDs came from. It's product specific EPDs. Very often we will see that PVC EPDs are industry-wide. They might be aggregating. Again, CEH has done, like, I urge you to go to this document, the dirty secret, because you will see that the data in EPDs is aggregated, it's incorrect, and very often it's industry-wide. That doesn't mean you know anything really about the specific product, but as we saw, this EPD that Tim showed is a product-specific product for Pureline.
Great. Absolutely. Yeah. Our CEH's publication, Climate's Flooring Dirty Secret, is what you were referring to. And we will share the link to that with our
must read.
Thank you for that, Laila. Well, with that, I think we've reached our time. I want to thank all of our audience and our presenters. And I want to make sure that the audience knows that we'll be sharing a copy of the slides and the presentation recordings with all of you by next week. And so again, I want to thank you, Laila, for participating and sharing your expertise with us. And Tim and Bas, absolutely, thank you so much for joining and sharing the attributes of your products. And hopefully we can continue this conversation and moving the market away from dangerous alternatives like PVC and into more sustainable ones like the ones that you guys showcased. So with that, again, thank you our audience for being here, and we will stay in touch. Thank you all.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Laila. Thank you, Jose.